966.
We are pleased to welcome Dr. Mohanad AlSheikh, CEO of Johnson Controls Arabia, who joins us from Jeddah in the eastern province of the kingdom. Johnson Controls Arabia is, of course, the JV of the U.S. headquartered multinational company that is the world leader and supplier of energy-efficient HVAC solutions for the residential, commercial, and industrial sectors, smart buildings, and so much more. Mohanad, so good to see you again. Thank you for joining us on the 966.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here finally.
Yeah, finally is the word, Mohaned. We're delighted that you're with us, and but it makes it all the better because there's a lot of things we want to talk about. But I mean, I tell you, let me go back. Let's talk about why I thought you'd be great on this show. All right, number one, you're a young Saudi CEO. Number two, you're partnered with a leading, large U.S. corporation. Now, just for our listeners, they should understand that Johnson Control was founded in Wisconsin in 1885?
That's right.
And York, which is one of your premier lines, Pennsylvania, I think in the 1870s. So these are old line, blue blood, very large U.S. corporations. Obviously, York was taken over by Johnson. But all right, so there's two things. This is all these things to recommend Mohaned for the 966. You've built, and I had the great opportunity to go with you to your factory at King Abdullah Economic City in March. You built a significant manufacturing hub, really impressive. You're using local content, leading technology. You've invested heavily in research and development. Maybe you can talk about that amazing shop you took me over to see. You employ, train, and upskill a large Saudi workforce, including women. You're building and have built and building a significant export market. So all these things, that are essentially sort of the sweet spot of what Saudi Arabia is trying to do with Vision 2030, you're doing. Johnson Controls Arabia. So hence our keen interest in getting you on the show. So we're delighted that you've come with us. But before we get all of that, if we can talk a little bit about how we first met you. We first met you in the States. So you came to start your studies at AU. Can you start with that and tell us a little bit about why you came to AU? And then, we had you for a decade plus, and then you went back to run the ship here. But tell us a little bit about coming to AU.
Well, I'll tell you first about my journey coming to the US. I did my high school here in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and then I decided, my dad actually is the one who decided to send me to the US. And I didn't start in AU, actually. I started in Midwest. I started in Carbondale, Illinois, 2 hours away from St. Louis, Missouri. That's where I started my English study, English as second language study. Stayed in Carbondale, Illinois for about 5 months or so, then moved to the west side of the US, to Eugene, Oregon. And somehow I found it too green for me. So I decided to move to the East Coast in 1996. And I stayed there for almost 12 years. And yes, you're right. I started my bachelor degrees at the American University, which I believe, was very good choice, giving, the beautiful campus they had and the good program, School of Business they've had. And I combined I took a dual degree from the American University. One was in the computer information system, and one was in the international finance. Then continued and did my master's degree in also at the American University in information systems management. And it was very good 6-7 years at the American University in Washington. After that, I wanted to do my doctoral degrees, so I pursued a couple of schools. I started the doctorate degree actually at George Washington University School of Engineering in an area of knowledge management. At the time, it was a brand new concept kind of in the area. I did not continue at GW. I transferred to the George Mason University. They had a great program under a great professor there, and I spent a good 6 years working on my project dissertation. Since I started working full time in Washington, and this is where we met, Richard, it's been 17, 18 years now since then. But yeah, that's
when we were each in our early 20s, right?
Yeah.
You were probably. Yes, you were. Actually, so you were at the World Bank Group, and then this is what's funny. I mean, so you have this engineering background, you have information technology, information systems, you have a very technical, some really strong credentials, and there you are dealing with the congressional affairs at the Embassy of Saudi Arabia in Washington, D.C. Tell us a little bit, how'd that happen?
That's somehow when you're in Washington Metropolitan, you cannot escape politics. And I remember at the time, it was early 2000. So you had the first the Palestinian Arab conflicts, and the whole Washington D.C. was quite overwhelmed with what was happening in the Middle East at the time. And this was I mean, before I joined the embassy, I was actually with the World Bank, and also at the time I remember being in Washington, lots of protesters and demonstrations against those evils, the World Bank and the IMF and it was quite interesting time, only to find out that the best knowledge management program that existed in the area was with the World Bank. So that kind of drew my attention to try to apply to get to the World Bank and work there. So before I joined the embassy to do congressional affairs, I was at the World Bank first, and the knowledge management program at the time was, as I said, one of the leading knowledge management program in the world. And the idea was, for the president at the time, James Wolfenson, he said, well, people came to the World Bank seeking financial aid. However, the knowledge the bank accumulated over the 50 years or 70 years history was so valuable. So we need to have a program for knowledge disseminations between the World Bank and the client countries. So they've spent at the time, I remember, about $250 million to build the infrastructure. And at the time, Richard, and I tease people about this, at the time when I did my project dissertation the bank had something called GDLN, the Global Development Learning Network. And basically it was a network to connect the World Bank with the client countries. And my dissertation was, is this GDLN network is an effective way for knowledge transfer? And luckily my conclusion was, yes, it is very effective to ensure knowledge transfer. And now when COVID-19 hit and everyone started using all these technology, luckily the world was like, okay, yes, it is an effective, but I did that research some 20 years ago or so. But yes, and after that I left the World Bank, and I had the opportunity to work at the embassy. I started actually working at the time when His Royal Highness Prince Turki Faisal was the Saudi ambassador to Washington. So that was also some interesting time. 2005, and we're still dealing with the repercussions of the 9/11, and I mean, so it was some interesting time at the those years working at the embassy, and having, I mean, experienced Washington D.C. as a student, and then as someone working in development, and then working at the embassy doing congressional affairs. And congressional affairs tend to be a very interesting job to do in Washington. So,
well, it's funny, and we should do a shameless plug here. Prince Turki Al Faisal has also been a guest on the 966, and he was tremendous. So
okay.
If you haven't seen that episode, to our listeners, and Lucian, I'm sure you'll agree with this. So Dr. Mohaned is in Washington dealing with congressional affairs, which is a very thorny, difficult thing. I will say this without a doubt, you have such a sunny disposition, a very calm demeanor, and just sort of a real sense of competence about you. So you were very good in the job. I'm not saying you really, it was the job that you wanted to keep, but you were very good in the job. But so you left in 2010 to go back to Johnson Controls Arabia. You became CEO in 2014. I want to give you a free run here. We're coming up on a decade of you being CEO.
Yes.
And we've talked, you had real ambitions to take this and build it and go. And you're now, this is now the largest, your shop is the largest industrial complex in the Middle East and Africa for Johnson Controls. You export to 25 countries, including finished products to China. Congrats to you. And you're one of the, Saudi Arabia's leading manufacturers and exporters of non-oil products. So by any measure, your term as CEO has been quite successful. But let's take it from when you came in 2014, what you saw, what you wanted to do, and what you've done. If you can sort of give us a run on that.
Sure. No, interesting. But I'd like also to pick on something that you said about dealing with Congress first. So I've had almost 1,200 meetings by the time I left Washington, D.C. in Congress. And I remember an advice that one gave me, and this was like first week on the job. He said, whatever they tell you, the first answer that should come out of your mouth is, yes, sir, you are right. and truly, whoever gave me that advice was so right. So I've had a good 5 years dealing with congressional affairs, and that, if you were to ask me, that was such a dramatic shift. And my wife, I got married, she came with me to Washington, so I took her to all those receptions in Washington, D.C., and she enjoyed the glamorous of Washington. So when I came back to Saudi, people asked me, so what do you do now? I said, well, I moved from politics to air conditioning. And she would look at me like, well, but that sounds like a downgrade, if you may call it. So, and I used to joke about it. And truly, I got into this. First, when I moved to Saudi, I wasn't the CEO. When I first joined Johnson Controls, I joined as director of operations, and that at least gave me some time to readjust from moving from government to the private sector. So I joined Johnson as director of operations. So I got to know and at the time, my benchmark wasn't the congressional affairs, wasn't the embassy. It was more of the World Bank, because it was the closest in terms of, it's sort of semi private sector type of experience, and it was truly, an enjoyable experience. Coming to Saudi, and people ask me, did you miss the U.S.? Spent 12 years there. Moved to Saudi after those years, and surprisingly, the work culture in Johnson Controls, Saudi Arabia, didn't make me feel that I had left the US. Just the look and the feel. The communications medium, everything is done in English, and the communication with most people and our joint venture partner, it's all done in English. You travel to Milwaukee, you travel to Europe. It's kind of gave you that feel. So I didn't have any sort of cultural shock coming back. And I remember I left Washington, D.C. I came 3 days later. I am starting my new job, new assignment. But it was kind of almost the same, the 9 to 7, 9 to 8 type of experience. And at the time, Saudi did not have the Vision 2030. So there were the first shock I had, the weekend in Saudi at the time was Thursday and Friday. So I remember on Wednesday, I told my colleagues, okay, see you guys on Saturday. And they were like, what do you mean Saturday? Tomorrow, Thursday, you come to work. I'm like, well, but when is the weekend? They said, the weekend you get 1 day, and that's Friday. And to me, that was the shock. If you were to ask what was the most shocking thing for me, it was that fact. What do you mean? I don't get 2 days weekend? No, you don't get 2 days weekend. I'm like, well, when I signed up, I no clue. And I took the first 3-4 months observing what people did on Thursdays. And I tell you, it was one of the most unproductive day. I mean, it was kind of a half day type of arrangements. And people, you'd see them walking around with flip-flops and bringing their breakfast. And it was just a strange way. So I used my skills from congressional affairs and I started lobbying within the company to change the work days from 6 to only 5. And keep in mind, the company was operating at the time for almost 20 plus years with the 6 days. So it took me a couple of rounds of talking to different stakeholders, and eventually we changed it. And it was a big celebration, not only for me personally, but for everyone that was. So I became the popular Mohaned kind of for being able to change.
Well, 2 things. You must have been a hero to start with. And the second, what happened with your productivity? Did it improve?
Well, I mean, that was the lobbying piece had two parts to it. The congressional affairs skills, and then the skills I acquired doing my project dissertation, because then you should do some scientific type of analysis about the productivity. So I did both. We kind of went around and measured at the time. Well, I mean, listen, imagine, I mean, if you give 2 days, full days, as people will become energized, ready to come to work on those Saturdays, rather than giving, and you do benchmark with international kind of organization operating in different parts of the world. So I used science, and I used some diplomatic type of, and some people were skeptical, some people were believing on it, and I assure you, I mean, productivity did not get impacted. If not, it went up, and actually it allowed us, because you have talked in your introduction. You talked about Saudizations, about women empowerment, about localization. So Saudis at the time, they tended not to want to work for the private sector, because imagine if you have extended family, you have kids, you don't want to work in a place where you don't get the 2 full days weekends. I mean, you kind of. So those, I mean, it allowed us to attract more Saudis, more females. I mean, people that found, wow, this is quite progressive work environment. So that was one of the, I mean, kind of first win, if I may call it, that I've achieved coming back. And then, I mean, 4 years later, I was promoted, and I was asked to be the CEO of the joint venture, and I've been working in that capacity since then. It's been almost now 10 years.
Well, let's talk about that. Geographically, how have you expanded Johnson Controls Arabia?
The success we have made in Saudi over the past 20 years, 25 years. Now it's been, the joint venture been in existence for the past 32 years, actually. But truly, Richard, I mean, I've had the pleasure. The joint venture had the opportunity to have it, I mean, great in both ways. You had accessibility to, a partner that has the best technology globally. And then you had a partner that knew the know-how of the country. So the synergy was positive in so many ways. And that led, I mean, truly. So the expansion to new geography was natural. So I didn't need lots of lobbying. I mean, let me put it this way, to show the real numbers, the real potentials, and the positive synergy if Johnson Controls were to expand its relationship with the joint venture in Saudi to other territories in the region. And since we last met, Richard, 6 months ago, we added now a new country to the portfolio. Actually, we just added Bahrain to the portfolio. Yes, just actually we're signing the final contract within, I mean, a couple of weeks, but it's a done deal for us. But we're looking at, I mean, we talked about, we have signed to establish an RHQ, a regional headquarter, covering the Middle East out of Saudi. We already have the largest manufacturing footprint for Johnson Controls in the Middle East and Africa region. So we have been supplying the region, and now to what you talked about, we're even going beyond. That last week was a milestone for us, where we had our first export to China from our facility in King Abdullah Economic City. So for us, I mean, for the past many years, it wasn't only Saudi in terms of the coverage to the rest of the Middle East. I mean, our factory was the manufacturing hub. So projects like Cleveland Clinic in Abu Dhabi was, I mean, the HVAC, the air side of it was all manufactured in Saudi. You have the Atlantis Hotel in Dubai, Abu Dhabi Airport. You had in Gardaga in Egypt, and many in South Africa also. We had projects, Infosys in India, and we've had, I mean, the JV, the way it was structured in terms of the accessibility to the technology, the R&D facility that we have, and also above all, truly, the intellectual assets. I mean, the joint venture has about 46 different nationalities, and we have, I mean, expertise from all over. And keep in mind, I mean, to also to what you brightly elaborated, is Johnson Controls' long history in Saudi. I mean, I've operated for almost 100 years in Saudi. The first project actually in Jeddah was done about 70 years ago or so. But in Saudi, Johnson Control almost existed for I mean, I would say Johnson Control existed in the Middle East for about 100 years, since 100 years ago. So you have world-class partner, American company, and then you have also one of the largest company in the Middle East getting together, and sky is the limit. So that's, I mean, this is how we looked at it. We have one of the largest market share for Johnson Controls globally in Saudi. And the discussion was how we can replicate that level of success in other regions. So we first moved to, it was Lebanon, moved to Egypt, to also we took Yemen. And there is a funny story about how that happened. And then now we're going to Bahrain, and we continue to develop relationships in other areas. Actually, I mean, now it's even, I mean, I could even announce that we are now expanding our joint venture to Oman, to Qatar, to Kuwait through the fire suppression and fire detection systems. It's one of the line of products that we do under the joint venture. And we also expanded the line card, the type of products and services that we're offering in the market. So our focus is not only on the HVAC field, but we're looking now also into things to do with artificial intelligence and machine learning and building technologies, and how to best decarbonize. I mean, I would say buildings through the usage of technology. Marine and Navy also is a key area for us now in Saudi, and we're trying to also expand that line of business through other geographies that we are managing today.
Well, it's clear when it was so much fun to go around your plant, and especially with your general manager taking us around. I mean, there was a tremendous amount of pride in the focus on research and development, cutting edge technology. And you're right, you don't just do HVAC, you do building systems and fire suppression and fire control, and all these things are you're expanding on. It just seems, and tell me if you can tell what was what was the name of the place we went to visit? It's the technology place. It's a specific.
Yeah, we're talking about the Open Blue Center. It's one of 5 centers for Johnson Controls globally built, and it's meant mainly for data-enabled technologies. And the idea is quite simple. We have a project here in Riyadh. We've installed the HVAC, but we also installed the building management systems and other systems. And in that particular project, we have almost 250,000 sensors installed. And to have 250,000 sensors, it means you need technology to efficiently manage the complex. It's a university complex, actually, in Riyadh. So, and the idea here is clients need expert systems. Not only they want to manage the efficiency of their system from a cost point of view, but also from a comfort level point of view, from a safety point of view. And COVID-19, I mean, was a new factor that building owners started to look into, and from hygiene and kind of, and you couldn't do that through human interventions. So you have to have a system that will allow the building owners to make decisions on real time to cater for their needs, whatever that needs might be. So it's something that we are heavily deploying in the Middle East, and luckily now with this center that we have, we're able to show clients the capabilities of technology and how we can integrate the hardware and the software into one platform to achieve the desired level of efficiencies or whatever that desire of the clients might be. Also, if you remember, Richard, when we visited the center, we've had the Open Blue with the data-enabled technology center, but we also had the labs, our labs and our R&D facility. And I'll tell you why this is important for the success of the company here. When we talk about the Middle East, we're not talking about one set of regulations. We're talking about countries that has huge different. I mean, again, if I use the analogy from Congress, you have almost 10,000 resolutions that comes out every year, and out of those 10,000 resolutions, only 0.2% of them become into law, and they cater for different stakeholders and different. I mean, the Middle East, when it comes to regulations for the HVAC, believe me, it's as complex. You talk about 50 hertz, 60 hertz, different standards that you have to deal with, and if you're not complying, I mean, God, a lot. I mean, so we had to develop the right R&D and the right testing facility, right laboratories, to make sure that we're able to have the right products, but we're also able to modify the products to cater for different regulations as they come. And another factor, when it comes to the Middle East, I mean, part of the success we've had, the economy of scale is not large enough for international companies operating outside the Middle East to cater kind of have those regulations for every country and every, I mean, aspect of regulations. So local players that invested in the R&D and invested in the testing facilities and in the lab are having the competitive edge. And we are actually the only international company with such capabilities built in Saudi today. So that's what's differentiating us from the rest of the competition, and is allowing us to gain, I mean, very healthy market share increase year over year.
Well, that leads us to the next question, I think. So we've talked a little bit about your exporting and the growth you've done geographically. You have a home market now that's exploding. And what is this? You know, the opportunities for a company like Johnson Controls Arabia must be enormous. What are you looking at, and where do you want to go? Because it's really promising market.
Absolutely. When we see Vision 2030 and the enormous number of opportunities that it has created for companies that are operating locally. So we do have the know-how, we do have the technology, and we have the right investment in Saudi. So kind of the ingredients of how to be an integral part of the Vision 2030 in Saudi and take advantage of it, we have it. So comes down to mega jobs and giga jobs. We are there. Our technology is there. Saudi Arabia also made it a point where local content, and they're not talking about local content from hiring Saudis. No, the ecosystem. I mean, how much local spending you're making, how much you are, I mean, spending in localization, training and development, in technology and technology transfer. And so they look at the whole ecosystem. And that's allowing us, again, to be preferred vendor when it comes to government and semi-government jobs, and we have the footprint in Saudi. So what we have done in the past 20-30 years, like projects like the Holy Mosque in Mecca and Medina, being cooled by Johnson Controls and York Equipment for the past 25 years. Reliable partner, despite all the cyclicality that happened in the market. And we've seen where companies, economic situations, 2008, the Gulf War in the 90s, some companies backed up and left, but the partner in Johnson Controls and the York International at the time stood steady and dealt with the challenges of those economic cyclicality. So comes down today, my secured volume year over year is one of the highest I've seen in the past 14 years in the company. I'm talking about 2021 versus 2022, and my first quarter and second quarter of 2023. And it's much higher than pre-COVID. I mean, that's usually my board members, they challenge me. Well, how was it compared to the pre-COVID? It's still higher than the pre-COVID. And when I look at the growth, luckily, it's not coming from one segment. So when I look at our DX business, mainly the B2C business, it's having great, healthy growth. When I look at our fire suppression, fire detections system, equivalent growth. When I look at our building management system and security infrastructure network line of business, is the same thing. When I look at our aftermarket operations, and that truly is a strength. We have in Saudi the second or third largest aftermarket operations for Johnson Controls globally. So for us, it's a great point of strength when it comes to deal with our customer. So that's also growing quite steadily. And we've introduced this what we call, I think we discussed when you were here, Richard, the ESCO platform, the energy auditing type of platform, where we go to government, non-government buildings, and we do our energy auditing, and we propose certain energy saving measures, and the system works in a way where I provide guarantees, financial collaterals against my promised saving to the clients, and I ensure that they get their payback in 2, 3, 4 years, and then they enjoy the saving after. It's a new concept that got created in Saudi 4 or 5 years ago. In the US, I believe the ESCO is wide. I mean, it's been in usage for years. But in Saudi, for the region, not only in Saudi, for the Middle East. This is a new concept, and we have a couple of hundreds millions of jobs now under execution using this model. So truly, I mean, the entire ecosystem is working beautifully, and they're supplementing each other. And in case there is cyclicality, and as I mean, we are not concerned that we'll be in trouble or we'll have to change our business model dramatically. So that's what we're doing. And as I said, new opportunities are being created. Saudi Arabia also, as part of the Vision 2030, is advocating for sustainability and green buildings. And I was in Egypt attending the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh last year, and I got to visit the Saudi green initiatives. And Johnson Controls globally, I mean, it's a world leader when it comes to sustainability and trying to push for technology that will allow for decarbonizations. And our CEO, George Oliver, I mean, this is his motto is, there will be no decarbonization without decarbonizing buildings. And you cannot do it without employing technology and without the ability of linking the hardware and software in a smart way, and making sure the electrifications of building is happening at the right rate to reach, for countries and for the world actually, to reach its desired targets of 2050 or 2060. So those type of regulations, those type of ambitions is creating opportunities for companies like us in Johnson Controls to take advantage of that. And by the way, we're also capitalizing on that when we talk to clients outside Saudi. So if I'm going to, I've had the team here from Bahrain 2 weeks ago, and I was talking about that. When we go to Egypt, it's something that we discuss. When we talk to consultants around the region that are specifying technology for future projects, we bring that experience from Saudi, from the world, and we try to promote that within to increase the standard and help everyone to come to a point where we're all kind of upscaling the standard, not only for the good of the kingdom or the region, but for the good of the world. And truly, it's something that one does in I mean, that with a great level of I would call it great level of confidence, not confidence, I mean great of comfort.
Yeah.
That you're doing something that's worth. It's not only about profit maximizing, or it's not about maximizing the shareholders' equity, but it's you're serving the community while you are achieving the shareholders of the company's right return on investment.
That's an interesting discussion of the business environment opportunities, and how you said, I'm not sure what the term was, but essentially you were saying the ecosystem in Saudi is working very well, and part of this, they've just named 4 special economic zones. One of them is King Abdullah Economic City. Will this impact you much?
Absolutely. We are actually positioned, luckily, within the 60 million square meter radius of the economic zone. So King Abdullah is 158 million. We picked the right spots, I would say, in the city to build our factory. And the incentives, they were just announced a couple of weeks ago. So we're trying also to make full sense of the impact on a wall-to-wall kind of calculations. But definitely, it's this. I mean, this is going to be the first economic city or free zone to be built. King Abdullah Economic City is well positioned. They have one of the largest ports today in the region, and the city is. I mean, now the Public Investment Fund is officially a partner within the city. So you have companies like Lucid Car coming in. We have another company, Sears, coming, and I mean, the city itself is flourishing, and the location that it has, we are about 3 minutes drive from the port, give us great accessibility to markets in Africa and in the northern part of the Middle East, and also it's I mean, now we talked about sending to China. I mean, using the when you have state of the art manufacturing facility and state of the art ports and logistic infrastructure, that will only allow you to reduce your cost and allow you to take advantage. So we're looking at the regulations now, and as I said, luckily we are, I mean, quite competitive when it comes to the Saudi markets, and that gives us the right economy of scale to take advantage of such regulation of the free zone to increase our export for the Middle East region and beyond. So this is where we are.
Let's talk about locally. I was fascinated to hear you talk about your first experience when you came back from Washington. You know, and when you looked at the day of the week, but also you looked at, you know, some of the things you could change. You're deeply involved in the community. Then you also were talking about sustainability as an aspect, the things, you know, positive contributions you're trying to make. So you're deeply involved in the community. Can you talk a little bit about what Johnson Controls is doing? I mean, this ranges from, you know, getting more Saudi women on the production lines. You have a serve your community program. You yourself honor a number of boards, you know, including a charity for children with cancer. And you know, I thought this was interesting, and maybe you could talk about it. You're a board member of the Association for Distinguished Initiative in Social Responsibility. You live in Jeddah. I mean, you're a Saudi. You're very proud of it. Can you talk a little bit about how you've involved yourself in the community? And obviously, you have a tremendous platform as CEO of Johnson Controls Arabia.
Thank you, Richard. I always say the best thing you could do to a community is by creating jobs. That's number one. And what we're able to do in King Abdullah Economic City is just to do that. We have been able to recruit Saudi women to work in the production floors. And this was, I mean, again, this was a paradigm shift. And I'll tell you a small story. I once was in Berlin, giving presentation about the Middle East and about Saudi and the work culture. And I remember one guy kind of raised his hand and with a challenging tone. He's like, I want to ask you, how many women do you employ in Saudi in your operations? And my answer to him was, well, as many as the women are in this room. And people started looking around, and the room was full of men. Because it was, I mean, at the time, we're talking about engineering company. Engineering companies usually don't have lots of women. I mean, it's mostly dominated. If you go to engineering schools in the US, you go look at, I mean, mechanical engineering or electrical or industrial, they're usually employing men. They're not. It's a fact. So when I came here, I mean, for us to have female representations in our production floors was a paradigm shift for industry like ours. And today we have, I would say, 10%, 15% actually, of our production workforce is Saudi females in King Abdullah. And luckily, we were able to attract them from areas around the economic city. So it's less developed areas. I mean, it's not the big cities that I mean, it was most from the villages around the economic city. So for me, I'm quite proud of what we're able to achieve there. And I talked to, I mean, I was myself was a bit skeptical. Are they gonna stay or they're gonna decide to leave? So I kept asking every time I go to the factory, how is it going? I mean, how is the turnover? And truly, the turnover is much less than their peer male colleagues. So it's been a great experience, and I think they're enjoying it. We're quite proud of the female representation that we have in the company. Of course, when the company has, I mean, good female workforce. But those are, I mean, the typical areas. I mean, all the corporate units, and but we're able to hire lots of Saudi engineers, technician, almost in every functional area of the company. We have Saudi female representations working with us. So that's from the employment side of things. When it comes to community support, I mean, contribute that to what I've seen in the US. I believe, and it's truly, I mean, it's the US when it comes to non-for-profits and non-for-profit, I mean, work and the way they are incentivized in the US. I mean, I'm quite something to be proud of. And I remember myself, by the way, I don't think we spoke about that. I have established an organization, was C3 organization in the US, in the state of Delaware. So I kind of went through the journey and I've seen it firsthand. And I remember when I wanted some legal advice, I got a couple of big legal firms. They're saying, we do pro bono work. And I had to look up what's pro bono. I mean, to that point. And I found out that the US system is built around community services and corporate social responsibility. So we try to replicate that. I'm not saying from a community. I mean, Saudi culture in the Middle East are quite also. I mean, I also give them credits, but from a corporate culture point of view, trying to institutionalize that as part of your DNA, it was not, I would say, widespread. So when I remember when I first came, spoke to our HR guys, I'm like, I want you to change the policy, allow employees to spend at least, I mean, have the employees have 2 days, I believe, every year to help the community. So it's part of the HR policy within the company, and we try to push it and promote it. And then as a company, we are to what you've described, Richard. We are board members in many non-for-profit organization, try to advance some of these work around. I mean, you mentioned one of them. We built an initiatives last year, and quite successful one, and basically trying to promote the industrial culture within the school environment for Saudi students. So we're able to have about 10,000 Saudi female and male last year visiting factories in the city of Jeddah.
10,000.
10,000.
Wow.
Last year we closed 10,000. Yesterday I was having a meeting with the Deputy Minister of Industrial Affairs, His Excellency Osama Zamin, and I shared with him the results, because he was instrumental in encouraging us to establish this particular initiatives. And truly, I mean, you see the participation from the Ministry of Education, and we talk about female, male, and trying to create the right ecosystem to promote industrialization and help the community. I mean, students that I mean go through the journey. It's quite proud of this particular initiatives. And next year, actually, we're talking about 50,000
Wow.
Saudi female and male students to be exposed to industrial environment, and we're planning a couple of big events, and the aim by year 3 years from now is to have 100,000 students across the kingdom. So we're one of the founders of this particular initiatives with 4 or 5 other companies in Saudi.
You've noted this before in the media. 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings just around the world. And you guys are leading on sustainability, on the implementation of HVAC and other solutions. I noticed you signed a partnership with Electromin and Petromin on renewable energy generation. Can you tell us a little bit about that and the possibilities there for you in Saudi?
Sure, I'll tell you. Luckily, when it comes to sustainability, and you're absolutely right, 40% of gas emissions comes from buildings, and what we try to do in the products and the services that we sell is to ensure that, because if you talk about the life expectancy of any HVAC system, we talk about the average of 20 years. So if you start installing the wrong equipments, you're in it with it for the next 20 years or so. So what we've done here in the past 2 years, we have with the collaborations with our global Johnson Controls team, we have localized 2 technology, and today they are 2 of the most efficient worldwide technology in the HVAC systems. And I'm talking about screw chillers technology and VRF technology. We are the only international company that is manufacturing those 2 technologies in the Middle East. So that's one. And when it comes to collaborations with companies like Petromines, they also believe, they have declared program around ESGs and the need to decarbonize, and they're quite leading actually. Even I have to give them credit. They are important partner of ours, and they're looking at to your point, initiatives like the Electromine, instead of their well-known company for Petromine. Now they're looking into that. So we're exploring, different usage of technologies on their projects, and we've been very successful to actually do that. But it all goes back to the kingdom's aspiration to reach net zero by 2050, and also for Johnson Controls aspiration to reach the same goal. So that's in brief what this partnership is about.
Amazing. All right, football time, guys.
So I've actually done it. We've talked about this, and I did a little segment about when I was in Jeddah. We talked about the Saudi Professional League, but I talked about Isa, who works with you. And yes. I was laughing because I spent as much time with Isa as anybody when I was in Jeddah, because you very, very graciously, and then, said, while Richard's here, I want you to help him out. So, and he's a big Ittihad fan, and I actually now have an Ittihad FC, Tigers shirt now. But so anyway, we're very excited about that. Now they have, is it Karim Benzema? How do you pronounce it?
Yes, Benzema just joined. Big celebration in the city last week, and Ittihad has, I guess, 5-6 million spectators. So it's big, and it's we're waiting for more players. I know not only Benzema, there is another Chelsea player that signed up. I cannot recall.
Conte, right? Yeah, Conte.
Yes, Conte.
Yeah. That celebration was on TV here in the gym. It looked like the Olympics opening ceremony. It was amazing. It was like fireworks and everything else. So that was really cool.
Well, and it's important for our listeners to know, because we do it on Saudi Professional League and soccer and football, because it's so organic and it's a long-term, passion for Saudis. And obviously Ittihad has just won the league this year for the first time, I think, since 2007 or whatever. So anyway, I don't know if Isa missed a few days around that celebration or not, but give him a little slack.
I will. He told me he was crying, truly. That's what he said. He said, I just couldn't believe that we won the game, and so he was quite emotional about that win. And by the way, speaking of sports, we're doing quite well when it comes to stadiums in Saudi. So we're also, you spoke about what's happening in Saudi. Luckily, we are trusted partner of the ministry, and some of the key projects they're executing in Saudi. So we're seeing major upgrades of the infrastructure in the sport facility.
Dr. Mohanad AlSheikh, CEO of Johnson Controls Arabia. Whether you're in Saudi now or have visited Saudi in the last 70 years, there's a really great chance you are enjoying or have enjoyed a comfortable indoor climate away from the heat, thanks to Johnson Controls Arabia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Mohaned, it was a year's wait and well worth it. Thank you so much for being with us on the night.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and truly my pleasure.